Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a pretty heavy one today. We're diving into a piece of medical research that really, it feels like it shifts the ground beneath our feet.
It really does.
It's about a terrifying, very high-stakes condition, pulmonary embolism, or PE.
And for this deep dive, we are focusing on one very specific, very precarious group of patients, the ones classified as intermediate high risk.
Right.
And that's not just a clinical label.
Yeah.
It's a designation for patients where the clock is just ticking so loudly.
Okay, let's unpack that right out of the gate. For you listening, you might be familiar with PE classifications, but why does this intermediate high-risk group matter so much? Why are they the focus here?
Because they're sitting right on the precipice of disaster.
Okay.
In the simplest terms, a PE is like a massive traffic jam in the blood vessels, going from the heart to the lungs. And the right side of the heart, the right ventricle or RV, it's built for low pressure.
Right.
So when a clot blocks that flow, the RV has to strain, tremendously to push blood through.
So the heart is literally fighting against a wall.
Exactly. And our sources define this specific high-risk group by having an elevated RV to left ventricular diameter ratio. That's the RV-LV ratio that you can see on imaging.
So if you picture the heart, the right side is suddenly ballooning out under the load. If that RV-LV ratio hits 1.0 or higher, it's physically expanding.
Precisely. And that structural strain means they are at a huge risk of early clinical decompensation and death.
But they haven't crashed yet. That's the key, right?
That's the key. They're still normotensive, so their blood pressure is holding steady, but that strain on the RV is this silent warning sign. So the goal of any therapy has to be rapid reperfusion. You have to relieve that pressure fast.
And that search for rapid relief brings us right to our source material today, the STORM PE trial. So our mission for you is to really get a deep understanding of how a newer, more aggressive intervention mechanical thrombectomy stacks up against the old standard of care, which is anticoagulation.
And what's so critical here is that STORM PE is the first reported randomized controlled trial in RCT to rigorously test the efficacy and safety of mechanical thrombectomy in this specific group.
A landmark study, then.
Absolutely. It gives us real, quantifiable data where before we mostly just had observational evidence.
Okay, let's start with the trial design. How did the researchers set up this fight? What were the two opposing interventions?
It was a very robust design, an international multi-center RCT with a 1-to-1 randomization.
Okay.
The two arms were very distinct. The control arm got what's called guideline-directed medical therapy.
Which is mainly just anticoagulation, right? Blood thinners.
Primarily, yes. Blood thinners to stop new clots and let the body slowly dissolve the one that's there.
And the experimental arm.
They got the new intervention, computer-assisted vacuum thrombectomy, or CAVT, specifically using something called the Indigo aspiration system. And this was plus the standard anticoagulation.
So this is where you go in and physically remove the clot.
You're physically aspirating the clot burden. It's a much more active approach.
So it's the difference between slowly dissolving the traffic jam over days versus, sending in a tow truck to clear it out immediately.
That's a great analogy.
It's all
passive management versus active intervention. And the trial was, it was small but mighty.
How many patients?
A total of 100 patients across 22 sites. So we had 47 in the CAVT arm and 53 in the anticoagulation alone arm.
And their baseline health was similar.
Yes, confirmed to be comparable, which is absolutely fundamental if you want to trust the outcome of an RCT.
Let's drill down a bit more on who these patients were. The eligibility criteria. It's so important for you to understand just how specific this intermediate high-risk category is.
The criteria were extremely stringent, and for good reason. These patients are in a delicate balance. They had to be adults, and they had to have acute onset symptoms. So symptoms that started within the last 14 days.
Meaning it's a fresh, dangerous clot?
Exactly. And crucially, they had to be normotensive.
Their blood pressure was stable.
Stable. This is the dividing line. If they were hypotensive, if their blood pressure had already crashed, they'd be classified as high risk, and they'd be candidates for a much riskier drug intervention called systemic thrombolysis.
So the researchers were really targeting this gray area, the area of greatest clinical uncertainty.
They really were. These patients are. They're walk-in wounded, they're stable, but their heart is structurally compromised.
And what was the proof of that compromise, the objective evidence?
It needed two key findings. First, that RV-LV ratio of 1.0 or greater on a CT scan, showing the physical dilation. And second, elevated cardiac biomarkers. things like troponin, which shows the heart muscle itself is actively being damaged by all that strain.
So if you met all those criteria, acute, normotensive, and that objective strain you were in,
You qualified.
that RVLV ratio, it really feels like the most important number in this whole analysis. The barometer of acute pressure. So what was the primary endpoint, the ultimate measurement of success?
The primary endpoint was defined as the difference between the two groups for the change in the RVLV ratio at 48 hours.
48 hours.
And this is the gold standard. It tells you exactly how quickly that pressure on the heart was relieved. And what adds huge credibility is that the assessment was completely blinded.
So the people reading the scans didn't know which patient got which treatment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was done by an independent imaging core lab, which removes any potential for investigator bias.
Okay, let's get to it. The efficacy findings. This is where we find out if physically sucking out the clot is really better. What did they find at that 48-hour mark?
The results were overwhelmingly clear
Mm-hmm.
and statistically definitive. The mechanical thrombectomy was just superior.
How superior? Let's talk magnitude. Give us the numbers so we can really feel the difference.
Okay, so for the patients who got CAVT plus anticoagulation, the mean reduction in their RVLV ratio was 0.52.
Okay, 0.52.
Think of that as how much the heart shrunk back toward a normal size. Now you contrast that with the group that got only anticoagulation. Their mean reduction was 0.24.
Wow. That's less than half.
Mm.
You are essentially talking about double the reduction in heart strain.
Double the relief in just 2 days. A numerical difference of 0.27 separating the groups.
And statistically.
Highly statistically significant. The p-value was less than 0.001. So we can be very confident that CAVT provides faster, more profound relief of that acute RV strain.
I want to zoom in on that speed.
Mm-hmm.
Why is getting that RVLV ratio down in just 48 hours such a game changer? Isn't anticoagulation eventually going to do the same thing?
It might, but time is the enemy of the heart muscle here. Think of that RV strain like an engine running way into the red because the exhaust pipe is blocked.
Mm-hmm.
If you leave it blocked, you risk permanent damage, which can lead to chronic heart failure later on.
So pulling that ratio down so fast potentially prevents that irreversible damage.
That's the idea. Anticoagulation is like waiting for the blockage to slowly melt. CAVT is like yanking the exhaust pipe open right now.
That makes the efficacy results sound incredibly compelling. Did the researchers also quantify how much of the actual clot was removed?
They did, and it confirms the mechanism. They looked at what are called the refined modified Miller scores.
Which are basically grades for how blocked the arteries are.
Exactly. And they found those scores also showed much greater improvement, meaning more clot removal in the CVT group. Again, with that same highly significant p-value.
So 2 lines of evidence. The device pulls out more clot, and the heart immediately shrinks back toward normal size. What about the patient? Did this translate into how they felt or how stable they were?
Absolutely. One of the other findings was that the CAVT group had earlier normalization of their vital signs within that 48-hour window.
So heart rate comes down, breathing stabilizes.
Exactly. The patient exits that precarious state much faster. It's a tangible clinical advantage.
Okay, so efficacy is superior, no debate. But my immediate next thought, and I know this is the concern with any new intervention, is safety. When you go into the chest with a catheter and a vacuum system, what's the trade-off?
That is the pivotal question, especially in patients who are already so fragile. The researchers were meticulous about this. They used a composite secondary endpoint for major adverse events, or MAE, within 7 days.
And what did that MAE composite include? What were they looking for?
It covered 4 critical outcomes. 1, clinical deterioration needing rescue therapy.
Meaning they were crashing and needed life-saving help.
Yes. 2, PE-related death. 3, asymptomatic recurrent PE. And 4, critically for an invasive procedure, major bleeding.
That's a really comprehensive safety net. It's designed to catch any major complication, whether from the disease or the treatment itself.
It is.
So what was the central finding on safety?
This is what's truly fascinating and maybe the most important takeaway for clinicians. The major adverse event rate within 7 days was not statistically different between the 2 groups.
Wait, say that again. The procedure that gave double the relief to the heart did not come with a statistically significant safety penalty.
That's right. That feels like a huge win for the intervention.
That feels massive.
Right.
What were the rates?
The CAVT arm had a major adverse event rate of 4.3%.
4.3? Okay.
The anticoagulation alone arm, the standard of care, remember, had an MAE rate of 7.5%.
Wow. So the standard care was actually a bit higher, though not statistically significant.
Correct.
Well,
The p-value was 0.681, so the rates were deemed comparable.
that 7.5% rate in the control group is...
Well, it's a sobering reminder that this condition is inherently deadly. The standard treatment is not risk-free.
It's not. And the fact that introducing a catheter-based procedure kept the overall MAE rate comparable suggests that the rapid stabilization from the clot removal balanced out the procedural risks.
Let's talk about the nuances, though. The sources mentioned 2 PE-related deaths, and both were in the CAVT arm. How do we square that specific detail with the overall safety conclusion? That's a great question, and it's where statistics and the nature of small trials come in. The MAE is a composite. It rolls all those bad events together. So while those 2 deaths did occur in the CAVT arm, the control arm had a higher overall rate of other adverse events, especially that clinical deterioration needing rescue.
So more people in the standard care group started crashing.
Exactly. So when you analyze it all together statistically, the overall safety profile was balanced. It tells us that while procedural risks are real, the risk of just letting the disease progress is just as high, if not higher.
That completely reframes the safety discussion. It's not just about the risk of the tool, but the risk of doing less when the heart is actively failing.
Precisely. The data suggests this aggressive intervention got superior results without exposing the patient to substantially greater overall risk in that crucial first week.
Let's synthesize this then. Let's bring it all together for you listening. We started with this patient group normotensive, but their hearts are structurally failing from the pressure. What's the final message from Storm PE when you balance the efficacy and the safety?
The synthesis is powerful and it's clear. Mechanical thrombectomy, or CAVT, provided faster, greater relief for the stressed heart. We saw that in the RV/LV ratio and the vital signs. And it did all of this while maintaining a major adverse event rate that was statistically comparable to traditional anticoagulation. It achieved better acute results without a short-term statistical safety penalty.
This really sounds like a turning point, offering a powerful new tool for a patient group that's historically been so difficult to treat, where just waiting is so risky.
It is a turning point in acute care, and it raises a really important question that goes well beyond that 7-day window of the trial.
You mean the long-term impact?
Exactly. We know that CAVT was superior in relieving the acute pressure overload with comparable short-term safety. But what critical factors beyond that 7-day MAE rate might drive the future of this therapy?
So you're talking about the patient's life after they leave the hospital. If the goal isn't just to survive the first week, but to prevent permanent heart damage, then that rapid superior relief must have benefits that extend far past that initial window.
It has to, right? We know the speed of normalization of the RV matters immensely for recovery. Future clinicians will need to know, does this immediate superior relief translate into better long-term functional capacity for the patient?
Does it reduce the incidence of something like chronic thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension, which is a devastating long-term complication?
That is the question. And that's the ultimate implication of this first-of-its-kind RCT. It gives us the data for acute management, but it really sets the stage for proving that the speed of your intervention dictates long-term cardiac health.
Thank you for guiding us through the high-stakes data of the STORM PE trial.
My pleasure.
And that's a fascinating area for you to mull over as you consider the future of cardiovascular intervention. We hope you feel thoroughly informed and ready to discuss this groundbreaking data.